Last summer, I went on a solo road trip across the Southwest. I was between jobs and figured it would be a good time to clear my head before jumping into something new. I wasn't on a tight schedule, so I didn't book hotels ahead of time. I just drove, stopped wherever I ended up by evening, and looked for the nearest cheap motel. One night, I ended up in a small town in New Mexico. It wasn't even a town, really. More like a stretch of road with a gas station, a diner, and a rundown motel with a flickering neon sign that said Desert View Lodge. I was tired and didn't feel like driving any farther, so I pulled in. The guy at the front desk looked half asleep. He handed me a key to room 6 and didn't even ask for ID. The place smelled like old cigarettes and bleach. I parked right in front of the room, which was good because the area felt off. Not dangerous, just weirdly empty. Inside, the room looked like something from a 1970s horror movie. Faded carpet, a stained armchair, dusty curtains. There was a weird buzzing sound coming from the old mini fridge, and the bathroom light flickered when I turned it on. Still, it was a place to sleep. I locked the door, pulled the curtains, and laid on the bed scrolling through my phone. Around 1:30 a.m., I was finally starting to drift off when I heard it. A tapping sound. Very light, very slow. Tap. 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 At first I thought it was coming from the room next door. Probably someone walking around or closing a drawer. But then I realized it was coming from the wall behind the headboard. My bed was pushed up against the wall that separated my room from room 7. I sat up. The tapping stopped. A minute later, it started again. This time, it was faster. Like someone gently knocking on the wall from the other side. I was wide awake now. I leaned in closer. The tapping stopped again. I was about to brush it off as maybe the pipes or something, until I heard a whisper. Very faint, like someone talking through a wall. I couldn't understand the words, but it didn't sound like a TV or a phone call. It sounded like someone talking directly into the wall, right behind my head. Pausing between phrases, I leaned in even closer and held my breath. Then I heard it clearly. "Can you hear me?" I froze. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the wall, heart racing. A few seconds passed. Then, "I know you're awake." I jumped off the bed and backed into the bathroom. I shut the door and stood there, trying to breathe quietly. I felt like I was going crazy. I didn't hear anything for a while. I thought, maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was a prank or some kind of weird echo. I opened the door slowly and stepped back into the room. Silence. I looked out the peephole. The hallway was empty. I considered leaving, but it was pitch black outside and the next town was over 40 miles away, so I stayed up with the lights on and didn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I finally worked up the nerve to go outside and check the parking lot. I walked past room 7 and noticed something strange. There was no car parked outside that room. All the other rooms had cars in front of them, but room 7 had nothing. I walked up and pressed my ear to the door. No sound, no voices, no tapping, just silence. I walked back to my room, double-locked the door, and sat in the chair until sunrise. In the morning, I went to the front desk to check out. The man from the night before was still there, reading a newspaper. I asked him, "Hey, was anyone staying in room 7 last night?" He looked up slowly and said, "Room 7? No. That one's been empty for a couple weeks. Needs plumbing work." "Why?" I just stared at him. I didn't answer. He squinted at me, then said, "Did you hear something?" I nodded. He was quiet for a second, then looked down at his newspaper. "Yeah," he said. "You're not the first one." I didn't ask any more questions. I grabbed my bag and left. As I was walking to my car, I glanced at room 7 one more time. The curtains were open now. I swear they had been closed the night before. And inside, just for a second, I saw something move, like someone standing at the window then stepping back out of view. I got in my car and drove away without looking back. I didn't stop until I hit a city with a chain hotel and full parking lot. I never figured out what was going on in that motel. I didn't report it. I didn't call anyone, but I've never stayed at a roadside motel again. This happened about 4 years ago, during a solo trip I took through Oregon. I was driving up the coast, staying at small motels along the way, mostly the cheap ones just off the highway. I wasn't picky, I just needed a place to crash at night. One evening, I ended up stopping a little earlier than usual because I was getting a headache from the driving. I pulled off onto a 2-lane road and found this small place called Baylight Inn. It looked old, but not awful. It had maybe 12 rooms total, all lined up in a row facing a gravel lot. There were no other businesses nearby, just woods behind it and the road ahead. The man at the front desk was polite but quiet. He gave me a key to room 12, the last one on the far end. He told me, "Let me know if you need anything. Office closes at 9. It was about 7:45 p.m. when I got there. Room 12 was basic, like every other roadside room I'd stayed in. Small bed, TV on a dresser, little round table with one chair, and a narrow bathroom. But I noticed something strange right away. There was no mirror in the bathroom. Just an empty patch of wall where a mirror clearly used to be. There were even 2 screws still sticking out of the wall, like someone had ripped it off recently. I didn't think too much of it at the time. Maybe it broke and they hadn't replaced it yet. No big deal, I was too tired to care. I showered, changed into some sweats, and laid on the bed with my phone. The Wi-Fi was spotty, but I didn't need much. I just watched some downloaded videos and tried to relax. I remember hearing a few cars pass on the road outside, but other than that, it was dead silent. That kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air is pressing in around you. Around midnight, I got up to brush my teeth. That's when the weird stuff started. I stepped into the bathroom, and as I leaned over the sink, I saw movement in the empty mirror space. Just a flicker, like someone was behind me. I spun around, but there was no one. The door was open, and I could see the rest of the room behind me. Empty. I looked back at the wall. Nothing. Just the bare screws and a faint outline of where the mirror used to hang. I figured it was my imagination. Maybe just the way the light hit the wall. I went back to bed and forced myself to sleep, but I kept waking up, first at 1:30, then again at 2:45. Both times I thought I heard soft knocking, like one single knock coming from somewhere inside the room. Not loud, just enough to pull me out of sleep. By 3:30 a.m., I gave up trying to sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, listening. That's when I heard it again. A single, sharp knock. This time, it came from inside the bathroom. I slowly stood up and walked over. I didn't turn on the light right away. I just stood there, right outside the doorway. Silence. Then I turned on the light. Still nothing. But this time, something felt off. It took me a second to notice. Even though there was no mirror, I could swear I could see my reflection, just barely, like it was behind glass that wasn't there. I stepped closer, staring at the empty wall. And I swear to you, I could see myself. Very faintly, like looking into foggy glass. But there was something wrong with the reflection. It wasn't moving exactly as I did. It was a split second behind. I lifted my hand slowly. The reflection followed, but it was lagging like a bad video feed. Then it smiled. I didn't. I stumbled backward, slamming into the wall behind me. The reflection just stood there, smiling. I shut off the light, slammed the bathroom door shut, and stood in the room breathing hard. I wanted to leave, but it was dark, freezing cold outside, and I had no clue where I was or where the next town might be. I sat in the chair by the window until the sun came up. At exactly 7 a.m., I packed my stuff, threw it in the car, and walked straight to the front office. The same guy from the night before was there, unlocking the door. I handed him the key and said, "Why is there no mirror in room 12? He gave me a tight smile and said, "We're waiting on a new one." I stared at him. "You sure about that?" He looked at me for a second. Then he said, "Some guests complained, said they saw things. We figured, better no mirror than another call to the cops." That stopped me cold. "What kind of things?" He didn't answer. He just looked away and said, "Drive safe." I left without saying another word. I looked up reviews of the place later, and barely found any. The few I did find never mentioned room 12. But one review did say something strange. It was from a woman who stayed there a year before me. Her review ended with, "Room 12 gave me the worst nightmares I've ever had. I still feel like I brought something home with me. I haven't been back to Oregon since, and to this day, I can't look at a bathroom mirror at night without getting chills." This happened a couple of years ago when I was driving through rural Nevada. I was heading home from visiting family, and it was late at night. I was exhausted, so I decided to pull off the highway and find a motel to rest before continuing the next day. I found a small roadside motel called Coyote's Rest. It was one of those places with a long single-story building facing a gravel parking lot. The neon sign was half broken, flickering in and out, casting odd shadows on the cracked pavement. The front desk was open, though the woman behind it looked tired and almost distracted. She gave me a key to room 4, which was near the middle of the building. The room was plain but clean. A bed, TV, tiny bathroom, and a window looking out toward the parking lot. I was so tired I barely unpacked. I just flopped on the bed, turned on the TV, and tried to relax. About an hour later, I was drifting off when there was a knock at the door. A soft but firm knock. Knock, knock. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated. Then I called out, "Who is it?" A voice answered, "Housekeeping." I wasn't sure if I heard correctly. I wasn't expecting anyone to come in the middle of the night. Usually housekeeping is done during the day. Still, I opened the door a crack and said, "No thanks. I'm staying here tonight." The knocking stopped. The hallway outside was empty and quiet. I locked the door again and tried to go back to sleep. About 30 minutes later, I heard the knock again. This time it was more urgent. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't open. I pulled the blanket over my head and tried to ignore it. But then I heard something else. The sound of footsteps moving slowly down the hallway. They stopped right outside my door. The footsteps paced back and forth, like someone was standing just outside, waiting. I was frozen with fear, listening. Suddenly the footsteps started moving away, going down the hall, and I heard a door close somewhere else in the motel. I thought maybe it was someone else in the building. The next morning, I told the front desk about the knocking. The woman looked surprised. "Housekeeping doesn't come in the middle of the night," she said, "and room 4 hasn't been cleaned today." I told her what I heard. She paused, then said, "Some people say this motel has ghosts. It's old, lots of stories, but I don't believe that stuff." I didn't say anything else. I checked out as soon as I could. That night on the road, I kept thinking about the knocking and about the footsteps pacing outside my door. I never found out who was knocking at room 4. A couple of years ago, I was traveling alone through a small town in West Texas. It was late November, and I was on a road trip, just trying to clear my head. I'd been driving all day and stopped at a roadside motel just off the highway called Sunset Pines. The motel was old and run down but still operating. The office was open when I arrived, and a man about my age checked me in. He was polite but didn't say much. I was given room 7, a small, plain room with an old box TV, a dresser, a bed with a worn-out blanket, and a small bathroom. After I unpacked, I turned on the TV to watch the news and unwind. The TV had the usual local channels, cable news, some movies, and a few random channels with static or test patterns. As I flipped through, I noticed a strange channel. It was labeled Channel 13 on the screen, but there was no number 13 on the remote. When I tried to press 13, nothing happened. Curious, I kept scanning the channels manually, and suddenly the screen flickered and jumped to this strange channel. The picture was grainy, black and white, and it showed a room that looked almost exactly like the motel room I was in. The angle was different, but the same furniture was there. The bed, the dresser, even the same pattern on the curtains. At first, I thought it was some old hidden camera setup, maybe for security, but it was obviously an old feed. The video quality was terrible and didn't show any movement. Then I saw something move. At the edge of the frame, I caught a shadow. A figure slowly standing up from the bed. The figure looked blurry, like a bad VHS tape. It didn't move its head, just rose slowly. Then it turned and walked toward the bathroom. I felt my heart start to race. I clicked through the channels, but the strange channel was gone. I tried the remote again. No 13. Then, the TV went black for a second, and when it came back, the screen showed static, just white noise. I shook it off, thinking maybe it was a glitch or the old TV messing up. But later that night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of the TV turning on by itself. The room was dark except for the glow of the screen. I sat up and saw the same grainy black and white image on the screen. The bed, the dresser, the curtains, and there was the blurry figure standing at the edge of the bed, staring straight at the camera. Then it moved again. It walked slowly toward the bathroom door. My blood ran cold. I was frozen. I wanted to turn off the TV, but my hands wouldn't move. Suddenly, the figure turned its head toward the camera and its face became clear, but blurry in a way that made it feel wrong, like a distorted photo. Then the screen went black. I jumped up and unplugged the TV. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I asked the man at the front desk about the TV and the channel. He looked at me strangely and said, "That TV's been broken for months. Nobody's used it." I told him what I saw. He nodded slowly and said, "You're not the first one to say weird things about that room. Some guests say the TV shows things that aren't there. Some say it's best not to watch it." I checked out right after breakfast and didn't look back. Even now, when I see old motel TVs, I get a chill thinking about that channel that wasn't supposed to exist. This story happened to me 2 years ago, when I was working as a night clerk at a small roadside motel in rural Arkansas. The place was pretty quiet most nights, just a few travelers passing through. I worked the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift alone, handling check-ins, answering calls, and sometimes dealing with the odd weird guest. One night, around midnight, a man walked into the office. He looked tired and worn out, late 40s, scruffy beard, and an old jacket that looked like it had seen better days. He said he needed a room for the night. I checked him into room 9 near the back of the motel. He paid in cash, didn't say much, just took the key and went to his room. For the first few nights, everything was normal. He'd come down to the office once or twice, asking for ice or some coffee. He was quiet but polite. Then, after about a week, I noticed something strange. Room 9's light was always on, 24/7. Even during the day when the guest wasn't around, the light stayed on. I asked around if anyone had seen him leave. The other employees said no. They hadn't seen him since he checked in. One night, curiosity got the better of me. Around 2 a.m., I decided to check on room 9. I walked over quietly. The hall smelled faintly like old cigarettes and something sour. The door to room 9 was closed, but I could hear soft noises from inside, like low murmuring or whispering. It sounded like someone talking to themselves. I knocked softly. No answer. I tried the door handle. It was unlocked. I stepped inside. The room was empty. No sign of the guest anywhere. The light was on, shining down on the bed, where the sheets were rumpled like someone had been lying there recently. I walked around, feeling uneasy. Then I saw it. A small worn notebook on the bedside table. I picked it up. Inside were pages filled with handwriting. Sometimes neat, sometimes hurried. The notes looked like journal entries. One page caught my eye. They say I can leave, but they never say how. I'm stuck here. I hear them at night. They watch. The room never gets cold. I can't sleep. I tried to leave yesterday, but the road was gone. My skin crawled. I dropped the notebook and turned to leave. As I reached the door, I heard a faint noise behind me, like footsteps. I spun around. Nothing. Just the empty room. I hurried back to the office, locking the door behind me. The next morning, I told the motel manager about what I found. He sighed and said, "Room 9's had strange stories for years. Guests who stay there sometimes disappear or leave without their belongings. Some say it's cursed. Others say the old owner died there and never left. I asked if the man had ever checked out. No record, he said. I never saw that guest again." Weeks later, the motel closed down. I still think about room 9, about the man who never checked out, and about the whispers in the dark.